Welcome to the Middle Room Workshop. Today we are going to print something with the Longer LK4X 3D printer, and in the process I'm going to show you a quick workflow to get you from the model to the print. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so for this demonstration I'm going to slice and print the air nozzle for the Longer Array 10 watt laser module, which I've designed here in Fusion 360. Now, the first step is to export your 3D model, your file, into STL or some kind of mesh format that can be worked out by the slicing software. The way you export it will change a little bit depending on the software, but in general it's pretty straightforward in most of them. Now here in Fusion 360, once you're ready with your model or part, you can go over to File, 3D Print. Then you will need to make sure that this Send to 3D Print utility isn't toggled. Click the model, okay, and then click on OK. Now here you can name and save your file. Now once you're done with that, let's jump right into CURA. Now for this demonstration I'm going to show you how to work with CURA. That is slicing software that is actually included in the micro SD card that comes with the Longer LK4X, and this is the version 4.12. Now along with the software they also include the machine configuration and material configuration files. Now I'm not going to show you how to set that up, so I'm going to assume that you are already set up with the software. So my purpose here is to show you the workflow to slice your model and to give it to the 3D printer for execution. Right here in this environment, this is the prepare environment. We are going to drop in our material. So you can either click here to open the browser, or you can directly browse yourself here and then to drag and drop into CURA. Now the first step, once you got your parts into the slicer, is to arrange them. Actually, the first I would say is to orient it, and now the orientation should be taking into consideration three factors. Now the first one is the strength factor, which I'm not going to cover in this video. The second one is the orientation by which your model is going to be the most stable during printing. Also the direction at which you will use the least amount of supports. I mean you want to avoid supports as much as reasonably possible. And then the third consideration is beauty. So if you wish to have the layer orientation on one direction rather than the other. And so in order to do that, first you need to click the print, and here you can move it, but what we care is about rotating, and we can also click select face, and I'm going to select the face that I want to be touching onto the bed. So with that out of the way, we can zoom out a little bit, and you can then also move it wherever you want. Now here, if you had multiple instances of the same part or other parts with it, you will want to arrange them onto your bed, and in the arrangement you want to make sure that they are the closest possible to each other, okay, so as to limit the amount of free travel that the machine has to do, which is wasted time. Alright, so once you're done with that, I'm going to slice it. Okay, that's actually a very simple process, and we are going into the preview tab so we can see the actual sliced model here. Okay, now here you can use the right slider up and down to move through the layers, and the bottom slider left to right to see the actual layer executing. Now this is a pre-slice, meaning that I didn't set up the things, so I'm going to walk you through the setup. When setting up your parameters, your print settings, as they are called here in CURA, you will need to take into account a few things, and most importantly, the material that you are going to use. Now, I'm assuming you are going to print with PLA because that is the simplest material to work with and is the material that most 3D printers include. Now, let's start with quality, okay? There we go. Now, if you see so many parameters, that could be a little bit overwhelming. I do suggest you to switch over here to the basic mode, okay? Now, you will see me switching back and forth between basic and advanced because I will need to toggle on and off certain features. Also, if you want to have a predefined set of parameters, you can go over to the settings and here you can toggle on and off what you want. Now, if you're starting out with 3D printing or if you're starting out with this software, you will most probably do this along the way, okay? Now, under quality, we get the layer height. That's the actual thickness of each individual layer. Now, this is going to change. You will need to change this parameter depending on the amount of details that your model has or that you want to achieve with your model, plus strength consideration that I'm going to leave out of this video. Now, what I found working good is 0.3 millimeters. This is pretty good for most projects. Sometimes I drop down to 0.2, but that's pretty much the maximum I go. 0.1 is really, really, really fine, and you will want to do that if you have a very highly detailed model, okay? For example, cartoon characters or something like that. And so that's why it is called quality. Now we are going to touch up on walls. Now for the walls, all you care about is the wall line count for the moment. Now what that is, let me go into a layer. This is the line count, 1, 2, and 3 as we set it here. So for the external feature and for the internal feature is the same. Similarly for top and bottom, 3 layers and 3 layers. So if we go to the bottom, now we can actually use the arrow key. So 1, this is the first layer, second, third layer, and then the fourth layer you can see already voids, and in orange you see the fill. So that's exactly what we settled here. Now in my experience, 3 layers for both the walls or perimeters and the top and the bottom face work just fine. Then you want to go to the infill. Now under infill, as a beginner, all you care about is the percentage. Now you don't want to get a full part, so a 20% or up to a 20% is what you most likely want to go for. And the other thing is the grid, the infill pattern. This is basically the pattern inside. So let me change it real quick to, let's say, I don't know, cubic, for example. Let me reslice it so you can see how that changes. Let me go up. And so, I mean, you can play around with this, and this is going to change how the inside looks like. Also here, strength consideration will also play an important role. Okay, then let's go to material. As we say, we are going for PLA. Now, for the printing temperature, you can refer to the spool of material if you bought it, either on the packaging or on the spool itself. There will be written the ideal printing temperature or temperature range, both for the extruder, which is this, and for the build plate. Now here, a quick consideration if you have a PEI bed, like in the case of the Longer LK4X, and that is, this material relies on the temperature in order to grip the part, to keep the part in place. And when it cools down, then releases the part. Now, sometime for certain material or certain different type of beds, you might run at higher temperature for the first layer and then drop down for the remainder of the project. However, in this particular case, I found that even a 10 degrees drop might cause addition problem and your print may fail. So in order to go there, you will need to go over to advanced, as you can see here. And so here, build plate temperature 60 degrees and build plate temperature initial layer, set it as well to 60 degrees. Okay, with this out of the way, speed. I'm not going to touch up on speed. Bear in mind that the default are pretty okay for most projects. If you want, then you can experiment. You can go faster or slower according to the specific needs. Travel, I'm not going to touch on that. Cooling neither. Supports. Now, this is another important thing. Now, the support are going to help you build your project, to build your model. And so there will be certain parts which are not supported by the body's own structure, and so you need external supports for that. Now, I have designed this model with free support in mind, so there is no need of support. However, in this particular case, because the patch or the contact area is very small, there will be not much addition to the bed. And also the part is going quite tall vertically. So I just wanted to add a little bit of rigidity or stiffness to the model while it is printing. So I am just adding a little bit of support here so that it's going to grab a little bit more onto the model. Okay. Now here you will need to test your machine. In this case, if you had a look to my video review for the Longer LK4X, I have already run the all-in-one test, and I was able to basically verify that you can have overhangs up to 60 degrees unsupported, and they will be pretty acceptable. Now here you see me dropping at 35 degrees, and there is so that I can avoid supports over here and over here, and I can just have it in this area where the hose is going to be. Okay. Now here you have an option which is for the placement. You can choose either touching the plate like here, touching the build plate only, or everywhere. If I reslice with everywhere, you will see that we are going to get supports generated inside of the model itself. Now for these small holes and also for these short bridges, supporting material is normally not needed. And that is something also that you can see with the testing that I performed in my previous video. Okay, you can see how far you can bridge. Now the only important thing to check, let me put this back into build plate only, is to check your first layer where the bridge starts. Use the cursor here, okay, and to make sure that the extrusion starts at a supported place and hence at another one. So as you can see here, we start at the support side and then we go across and down here. Okay, so now the slicer will take care of that. You don't need to take care of that, but it's good to check if everything is actually okay. And finally, we get the build plate addition. So this is in order to make sure that you are actually going to stick to the bed properly. Now there are several ways to achieve addition. Now what I like to use personally is brim, which is what you are seeing right now on the screen. And so you can see that this is actually the model, and then this in blue is the brim extending out. Now here the only parameter you need is the brim width, which I would suggest you to be in units of millimeters, for example. And so you will need to assess your model. For this particular model, a 4mm brim is going to be more than enough. This will basically help the entire model to don't rely only on its contact patch here on the bottom, but to have a larger area. Okay, and the cool thing as well is that the brim extends also around the supports. Now there is an option to toggle that off if you don't want that, but in this case I'm going to go for it, so I'm going to be sure that everything sticks up to the end of the project. Now the other option would be to use a raft. Now the raft, let me slice it so you can see it. it's going to basically create like a platform, like a slab under the entire model. That is something that I very rarely use, and that is because it's a lot of material, and for me it's wasting of material and time. Okay, and also sometimes the model bonds so well to the raft that it's very hard to actually detach it without damaging your part. And so for this reason, I'm always going for brim. If your object, if your model happen to have a large base, you will most probably not need any brim or raft. All right, this is pretty much all now. So once you're done, you can just export your sliced file into G-code and give it to your 3D printer. Now you can either save it to your local drive, or if you have an SD card already inserted into your PC or laptop, you will have the option Save to Removable Drive. So click on that, and the slicer will basically name it and save it directly where it has to go. And then you can also click on Eject to remove your SD card there. All right, so let's now jump onto the 3D printer. Let me show you how to set everything up and how we are going to print. Now let's get our SD card and let's insert it into the slot. Now power up your machine. Now the machine is already running in this case. The first thing you will want to do, rather than selecting your file, I prefer to go over to Filament and then select the material preset. Now in this case we say we are going to use PLA, so I'm going to click on to PLA, and you see the preset is 200 for the nozzle and 60 for the bed. And I will leave it a little bit to warm up. What I highly recommend you to do before each print is to clean a little bit the bed with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. And so to do that, I'm going to basically spray with some alcohol here, only the area where the model is going to be, and then I'm going to basically wipe that off. So this is going to remove a little bit of residue of everything, including, most importantly, the oil from your fingers. So with that done, now the bed is almost ready, so we can go over to File. The machine is ordering your files in chronological order, with the last one being at the top, so it is very easy for you to actually click the last one and then to say open and then start printing. Now this is going to wait for the bed to actually be ready before to initialize, and then you are going to see your machine. If you left all of the settings in default, you are going to basically see your machine going through the auto leveling process and then start printing. All right, so as you can see, the machine is done printing, so we can click on finish. It took 59 minutes, by the way. And now the bed is already cool. If you want to check the temperature, you can see over to Filament. You can see here the temperature. Okay, so now I can pull the bed. Let me turn on the other light. And when it's cool, it should come off very easily, as you saw here. And this is the part. Now as you can see, it's fairly clean. It is not perfect. The machine still needs a little bit of tuning, but it did a pretty decent job, and supports plus brim should come off very easily, as you can see. Now let's perform a very quick fit test. This is the 10 watt laser module for the Longer LK4X machine, and that's actually supposed to be the other way around. And as you can see here, we are perfectly fine. Then 2 screws will go on either side. The pipe will come over here, and here there will be small place recessed for the gasket. Now, I hope you found this video helpful, informative. If you have any comment, leave them in the comment section below. If you like the video, click the thumbs up button below and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more videos like this one. Ciao for now!